Hi, my name is Alex, and I'm one of the youth work assessors at UCAN, and I'm here with Della.
Hi, I'm Della King. I am the lead youth work assessor at UCAN and work alongside Alex.
Cool. So today we're going to be looking at work-based practice, and we're going to look at what work-based practice is, and just give you a bit of an oversight of what we're kind of expecting from your work and your assignment. Myself and Della have years of experience working with young people in various different contexts, so we wanted to kind of share our experiences, but then also kind of like update you and kind of give you a bigger picture of what work-based practice can be. So Della, what would you say that work-based practice is, and where do you feel that youth workers go wrong when thinking about work-based practice?
My definition of work-based practice is what we do as youth workers. It's being a youth worker. It's, whether that's communicating with young people, delivering, targeted youth work, it's detached and outreach. It's what we do on a daily basis when we are working directly with young people. It is our practice.
Yeah, and like over the. Oh, sorry.
No. Sorry, I thought it was going to lead into. I forgot the second part that you asked me now.
Yeah, we were going to ask about where you've seen it gone wrong, and where you see some youth workers make mistakes with work-based practice.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a little bit clearer. Thank you. So in this assignment, in this unit, the whole unit is about getting you to develop your practice in what we do. So we can't just do something because it entertains young people. Everything that we do has to have some kind of purpose. It has to have an outcome. It has to be benefiting young people. We have to think about why we're doing it. What are the needs? Are the needs needed for those young people? It's looking about the rationale. What's the thinking behind it? What do we hope to achieve? It's getting us to develop our own practice to ensure that the programs and sessions that we do run are purposeful. They have a meaning. They're not, I think, as I said to you, Alex, it can no longer be just a game of football. A game of football has to have a purpose behind it. What are we giving young people?
Yeah, and I think similarly in my own kind of experiences, that's where we miss out on opportunities to really develop young people if we just and not just that, like it makes youth work look like we just babysit or we just look after young people. We're just there to kind of fill numbers, but like you said, a game of football can be so much more. Even if it is football, we can think about it in such a broader way when we understand what the needs of the young people are, how we can support them, how we can develop them, what we're trying to do with it. So yeah, like I think where the mistakes that some youth workers I've seen is that they just do. They're very active, but there's no kind of thought out process of where am I taking young people, what are the needs in this space, and then how I can kind of support it. So when we're going to be talking and looking at work-based practice and thinking through some of the units and some of the criteria, we want to kind of have, that's what we want you to be thinking about your young people, who they are, what do they need, and how you can support them best to grow. Have a conversation about empowerment and participation, and I think it's just a really important conversation. And also it looks at outcomes 1.1 and 1.2. So Della, you were just sharing with me your view and your take on participation and empowerment.
I think real participation and empowerment are very much linked together. So if young people are empowered to fully participate, that is empowerment, because you are developing them, you are giving them the skills to make decisions, to have choices. So I think the two for me, they're the same. Yeah. Empowerment, again, I think in a previous recording we talked about buzzwords, and we throw this word empowerment out there, but how we kind of know the definition of how do we empower young people, and it is by giving them the ability to make choices, to do it their way. Full participation is everything about that program, that session. Young people have been not just involved, it's theirs.
Yeah.
It's theirs. We're just there to facilitate. That's full participation, which then equals empowerment.
And how there's kind of like theories that we look at and consider when we're thinking about participation. Could you maybe speak on one of them that's really kind of helpful as a framework to think about where your young people are at, and even when they're starting to put together their plans, you know, to start thinking really deeply about, are their young people really participating in the work that they're doing?
The one that I always turn to and use throughout this apprenticeship, but again, there are other participation models, but we look at, in this one, at Roger Hart's young people's participation. I'm hoping that you would have previously already have looked at this, but what Hart is looking at is where previous early youth work was more about kind of just maybe bribing young people or manipulating them to get involved in youth work. You know, oh, if you come along, you're going to get a free McDonald's. That's kind of what I mean by bribery. That's not really youth work. We are looking at trying to work out how we can get to the top of Hart's ladder, which is, it actually reads rung 7, which is step 7. Young people and adults share decision making. I kind of agree with that still, but I prefer to step down, which is step 7, which is young people led and initiate action. For me, that is total participation of young people, if that makes sense. But you, again, apprentices will need to do a bit of research on this and understand it, because I will be expecting to read this in the assignment. Have I explained that okay?
Yeah, and I think like when you are looking at participation, it's a spectrum. Like, you're not always going to have groups that are fully participating. Some young people might be really low down on the ladder, but all your work should be about empowering them to move to the next kind of stage. And how can you take them from, it might be that we've been coercive, we might have promised them to get them to take them to the cinema and do those kind of things. You might have to do that initially sometimes to get that engagement. You might have to do things just to coerce them to come. But once they're there, you should have a clear plan about how we're going to move them to the next stage. How are we going to make them participate, so they're not just turning up for food, or they're not just turning up for something, that we're really developing young people that are leaving our spaces empowered to engage with the world, they're empowered to kind of engage with whatever they feel within themselves that they want. We've helped to kind of push, and we try to help them to kind of engage. And I think, you know, there's different ways that I've seen this happen. I know youth clubs that at the beginning of the year have sat down with their young people and they've told them, this is our budget, you need to go away and plan, what can we do, research these kind of things. That was one way that a youth club used participation to get young people to buy into what they were doing, because they gave them power to say, you choose what we're working towards. So there's loads of ways that you can do it, but it's really important when you are thinking about your own project now, think about where your young people are at and be honest. It's okay that they might be lower down, but just be honest with that. When you are planning, thinking about moving them up the steps, thinking about the steps of participation, and yeah, what you actually want to do and develop in your young people.
So just to make clear, so 1.1 and 1.2 of work-based practice, we would be looking for a written piece. You can combine the two of what is your definition of empowerment and participation, and giving us examples of that. But how you could combine that with 1.2 is then start introducing Hart's ladder of participation. And as Alex said, and very honestly said, at first, try and get young people to engage and to attend. We may need to, you know, use bribery, though I don't like it, but it's always about knowing look, we need to move this on now. We've tried this, they're engaging, let's move on. You cannot continue that. Or if you turn up next week, you know, we'll give you a £5 gift voucher, and that continues. That, you know, that's never developing them, and you're only getting attendance because you're using bribery. So that reviewing it is, yes, this happens, I like that honesty, but this is how we're going to develop it to then move up to the next stage, and then the next stage. That's what I'd be looking for in the written assignment.
Yeah. So we're going to just kind of give you an overview and talk about what we're looking for and expecting for work-based practice, and how we're going to evidence it, what the kind of work that by the end of it you should have produced. So Della's just going to give you kind of an overview, and we'll talk a bit about how you can collect evidence and what's the best way to do it as well.
Okay, so by the end of this unit, we would need a session plan or program plan that's quite detailed. In that session plan, you would have hopefully have looked at the Naomi planning model, which would give you the stage of how this should be done, what are the needs of the young people, how we're going to implement that, what hopefully will be our outcome. So we're looking for quite a detailed session plan. And also in that session plan, maybe you'll need to consider internal, external factors that might impact on that session or program. Is it outside? Is it inside? Is there travel? Can young people get there? Is it accessible to all young people? You'll have a template. We can give you a template, but we're happy to accept your own one as well. Session plan, yeah, okay, sorry. I'm trying to think of the evidence we're looking for. We're going to also, alongside that session plan, we're going to want to see a risk assessment for your session or your program with young people. We're looking for any resources that you may need for that program or session, and that those resources are actually age appropriate. What we've seen previously in the past with other apprentices is you might be running a session for a group of young people that are 15 and above, but actually your resources are more suitable for like a 10-year-old. So what we're going to be looking for is, are they age appropriate resources, and will those resources be engaging for young people? So I can't say what the resources will be, because obviously I don't know what your program is, but let's be creative. What will engage young people? Stop me, Alex, if I'm missing anything. I was going to let you explain kind of the recordings of the actual session.
Yeah, so once we've got kind of like the initial part, so we've got like the risk assessments, we've got all the session plans, you kind of come up with your reason in why you're doing what you're doing. What we want you to do is to document the whole process. So from you coming up with the idea, you implementing the idea and working with a group of young people, then coming to the end and doing your evaluation, we want to see all of those processes. So there's various ways that you can do it. You can do it written with photographs. You can do it with you can do it as a video. We'd really love to see your work in progress. So you could do vlogs about your progress of what you're doing, what you're writing about, do discussion around what you're thinking about, your rationale for that. And then also, when it comes to doing the session with the young people, if it's possible, we'd love to see like a video of your young people. Obviously, there's some things that they would need to consider when they're doing that. Could you maybe kind of speak on some of the things that they would need if they did do a video of a session?
Okay, they need to get the young people's consent to actually video them, but we wouldn't need that consent. We just need, you know, once you've said consent has been given, we're fine with that. So there's no documentation or anything like that. Obviously explain to the young people the purpose of the recording, and is your organisation happy for you to do some video recording? Think about the amount of data that you're going to use, because it's going to be very hard. Like if you're trying to send it through to us, some videos won't get sent through, so they might have to be added to our YouTube channel. I think that would be it for consent of using videos, and just for reassurance to everybody involved in it, you don't necessarily have to get a colleague to video you. Do it in small chunks maybe, but it's actually a way of us seeing you in your youth work practice.
Yeah.
Because we're not obviously going to be able to always carry out observations.
Yeah.
And by having these videos, we can actually give you feedback on that and give you an observation based on your video.
Yeah. And then we would like to see like how you set up the agreements with young people when you're starting the session. Like, how do you start the session? How do you introduce yourself? How do you introduce to the young people what you're working with?
Has sort of expectations of the group, the program. You know, are young people given the opportunity to also say what they expect from us as youth workers?
Yeah.
It's not just about their expectations for what they need to be. What do they want from us?
Yeah.
I'd like to see some sort of evidence that you could capture that in just a recording with young people. How did you negotiate? Were they referred back to those ground expectations? Or they could come in a document form if you wrote it up on a flip chart and young people signed. You maybe could take a picture of it. That would be your evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess ultimately what we really want to see is this is part of your day-to-day work as a youth worker. Whether you're working one-on-one, whether you're working in groups, whatever your context, you're going to be working with young people. You're going to have to set up programs with young people, sessions with young people. So you want to see your process. How do you work with young people? How do you engage them? What do you put in place? What sessions are you thinking about? And hopefully by the end of it, you would have documented that whole process. So we're able to kind of see where you're at, where you might need to develop. And like Della said, you can set up your own YouTube channels to document this whole process. So it could be a written diary, but we just need enough evidence, pictures, just so that we can kind of see that. And hopefully doing that and document that process will hit a lot of the criteria. And yeah, we'll be able to kind of answer the questions that have been asked of you.
And one of the main things to try to evidence is, what I look for is, what was the thinking behind that program? Yeah. Have you got facts and have you carried out any kind of research that program or activities is needed? That group of young people actually need this to, I don't know, upskill, educate, develop them in their social skills or life skills. What is it behind that? Some of the previous apprentices that I've had actually did research on an issue that was going on in the community, and that's why they did what they did. So they came with a lot of research as well. So I'm looking at that. I don't no longer want it to be, we're just doing this because that's what we think young people need. No, that what do young people ask for?
Yeah. And yeah, if you can get the young people to even be part of the planning session as well, and the planning process, that would really show, you know, when we start thinking about participation and helping young people to kind of move up the ladder of participation, that really shows us that actually it's a youth-led program, that you are trying to give young people power. Maybe you're giving them, you know, control of the resources or the budget. Maybe you're getting them to choose the session names, you know, however it is, but document that process and help us to kind of see what your process is like, what your youth work is like.
Mm-hmm.
And then once this is all done, hopefully either myself or Della will sit down with you, can talk through your process. We can evaluate it, we can see what went well, what you would change next time. And then yeah, like try it again, trial it, see what you can do, and enjoy the process. So part of this, part of your process as well, at the end, you're going to have to evaluate it. And there's different things that we're going to be looking for when you're doing your evaluation. Della, if you are happy to kind of speak on some of the stuff that we're looking for, what would work and what has worked in the past?
Yeah, what method would you use to evaluate different programs? So is it going to be an evaluation document that you give out to young people? Again, is that age appropriate? Is it going to give us unbiased information, which I very much doubt? We know young people will just tick a few boxes and not really write much in there. is it a conversation that you're going to have with young people and you go away and fill in an evaluation form? Is it going to have smiley faces? Are you going to actually ask them questions? I was speaking to someone earlier about this, about the evaluation process, and what they actually did in their unit of work-based practice is they got different young people to ask different young people questions on what they would have liked to have been asked. So rather than the youth worker trying to take control of that and asking the questions that they felt were important, let's get young people involved. How would you evaluate this session? You know, is it a scorecard? Whatever evidence you use, I really want it well thought out. And what does that demonstrate? And is it unbiased or biased data that we're getting from them evaluations?
Yeah, and especially in 5.2, it's looking that you're planning it. So, you know, the unit's kind of written backwards. But in the part where you're coming up with the ideas and you're thinking about your whole process and you're looking at Naomi and the planning, you need to start thinking about how you're going to evaluate it. How are you going to know that you've met the targets that you set? How are you going to know that the young people have met the aims or the kind of the outcomes that you wanted for them in the session? So it's important when you are at the beginning of it that you are still thinking at the end. How are you gonna evaluate it? What methods? And yeah, whether you're going to involve young people. Well, I think we should always involve young people, but in what way you're going to do that? And is it valid? Is it going to work? Is it going to show you whether your program's well written, well done, well executed, or is it going to be biased and just say that you are excellent youth worker? So really think about, it's about challenging yourself at the end of the day. The feedback, good or bad, is about your development. And so yeah, try and make sure that you're challenging yourself to see how your program went and how you can kind of improve it.
And all I would add to that is, remember, in your session plan, you will have your outcomes. What do you hope to achieve? What is it you hope to be able to give to young people? So your evaluation needs to look at that as well. Did we meet our outcomes? Did they learn anything? What skill did they get from doing this activity program? That would need to be included in your evaluation. Otherwise, your evaluation is a tick box exercise and doesn't mean anything. In youth work, we need to look at our outcomes because it's the only way we're going to know whether we've been successful in what we do. So don't look at outcome 5 as just a tick box exercise. Be really thinking about this, because you're going to go on to evaluate a lot of your own youth work programs, because that's our hard evidence that we are benefiting the lives of young people.
Yeah, and especially if you're thinking about your career long time, you might be having to write funding bids, or you might be having to try fund sessions and get money to kind of support the young people that you're working with. So being able, especially with a lot of funding bids, you have to prove that your program is meeting some kind of need, it is supporting, and that it's going to be evaluated in a certain way. So it's not just like Della said, it's not just about a tick box. Long term in your career, you're going to have to be, and you probably will be in positions where you're going to have to look to evidence the work that you're doing with young people.
Mm-hmm.